guys, Nikki from Watch Home Fantasy. I'm just bringing you a really quick video this afternoon. I just wanted to give you a few hints and tips because I've had a few landlords recently say to me, oh, that's got a fantastic tenant, thank you, Nikki. And they say, how do you pick a good tenant? Now, I've been doing this for 12 years. Now, there is absolutely no right or wrong way of how to pick a tenant. Unfortunately, sometime in your life you probably will get stung by one, but there are a few hints and tips and ways that you can try and avoid it. I am particularly fussy, and anybody that knows or works with me knows I'm really fussy when it comes to tenants, and I will do 50 viewings rather than the 5 just to make sure I get the right one, or one that I definitely think is going to look after your property and your asset. So here's 5 quick top tips on how to get a great tenant. So first of all is presenting the property. Now, I'm a very big believer that if you present the property well, then the person that comes to view that property will also be in keeping that property up to that level of standard. I believe that how you present a property is what kind of tenant you will get in return. If you show that you love and you look after that property, then most tenants will love and look after it for you as well. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, don't ever judge a book by its cover. We are all guilty of doing this at some point in our lifetime, whether this be with business, with tenants, with anything. We do often jump to assumptions. So my second tip is don't judge a book by its cover. Listen to someone's story. I am a big listener of stories. I've got some of the greatest tenants that on paper are awful, but in reality they're fantastic. Never had a rental problem, never had any issues with the property, and have been with me for years because I listened to their story. I found out why they were looking for somewhere to rent, what made them tick. Didn't add up, on paper as to why they were applying for property, but I listened to them. So make sure you listen to them. Tip number 3 is try and make sure you get a company that, if you're renting it yourself, then you can do this, or if you are renting it through an agent, try and make sure you get somebody that is going to do the referencing in-house. Now, what I mean by that is they are physically going to pick up the phone and they're going to ring the landlord and they're going to find out a previous reference. Now, there is no foolproof way of getting a reference. Obviously, you can find that they do tell porkies and say that this is their landlord when actually they've given you Joe Bloggs' number down the road. But the thing is, if you can pick up the phone and get an idea of a reference from them, you'll get an idea of what kind of tenant they are. A landlord cannot give a bad reference, but they can refuse to give a reference. Now, if you have a landlord that refuses to give a reference, then you know that there's something behind that and there's some reason why they won't do it. So always try and make sure that they speak to them in-house. We have a lot of landlords that say, I don't want to give you a reference until I've done an inspection, which is great, that's fantastic. At least we know when the reference comes through, it is completely honest and open and true. So that's tip number 3. So tip number 4 is, if you're doing the viewings yourself, try and talk to them and get a feel of what kind of person they are. Now, if you are using an agent, ask them to do the viewings themselves. Don't send out a third-party viewing assistant because they won't get an idea as to what kind of tenant they are. So you need to have a conversation with them, bearing in mind, particularly if you are doing it on a tenant find only, because if your agent picks them and they don't get along with you, that can be a little bit awkward when it comes to managing the tenancy. So make sure if you don't do the viewings yourself, that your agent does for you, and gets an idea and feel of what kind of people they are and whether you would work well. Bearing in mind, your agent will know your personality and their own, and it may seem silly, but at the end of the day, this is your asset and you are giving them a lot of responsibility to look after that for you. So that is tip number 4. And final tip number 5, the one that everybody doesn't like: consider everyone with pets and children. Okay, I know a lot of landlords out there don't want to have a look at the pets and children option because they are terrified of what can happen. Don't get me wrong, there are people out there that have been bad tenants and destroyed a property through pets and children, but there are some fantastic people out there as well, and you shouldn't just dismay yourself because of the fact that they have pets or they have children. meet the person, meet the pet, meet the children. You know, you will know from a person, and you will kind of judge from a person what kind of person they are and how they feel, and how you think that they're going to look after your property just from the way they present themselves. So you get a rough idea on that. And there's another little tip for you, number 6, sneaky one. What I do a little bit is, if you know that they are renting somewhere at the moment and that's going on to the rental market, or they're living in somewhere at the moment and their property is up for sale, go on Rightmove, look at their pictures and see how they've looked after it and how they've presented it. It will really give you an idea as to how they look after their properties. So go and have a gander and see how they've looked after it and how they've presented that property, whether that's for sale or to let. And it will give you a really good impression as to whether the house is well kept, whether they look after the bathrooms, even look for the grounding around the bathroom areas. That's a really good point for you to look out for as well. So that is my few tips on how to find and keep a good tenant. And remember, if you get a good tenant, look after them. Make sure you maintain your maintenance. Make sure that your agent is top of your maintenance. The last thing you want is a great tenant leaving because it takes 3 weeks for you to fix the boiler. So make sure that you look after your tenants when you get a great tenant. And make sure that they stay with you, because most of them will. I've had tenants following me around for 12 years. Every time I put a property up, they'll leave me to go and find something else because we don't have something available at that time. Then they'll go, Nikki, can I come back? Because I found a house that you've got coming on the market. And that is a great thing. I am really proud of that. People actually follow you around. So make sure if you get a great tenant, look after them. They are your asset. They are really important. And let them treat it as their own home. If you let them treat it as their home, then they will look after it, your home, for you. So that is my few tips of the day on how to find a great tenant. If you need any more help, advice or guidance on any of your property needs, you know where to get me on the number or email below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.